Hello, everyone, and welcome to the round 2 recap of Hart House Holidays Open Tournament. So I started the tournament with a pretty comfortable win against FIDE master Michael Doherty in round 1, so I was pretty energized and confident going into the second round. However, in the second round, I was up against a new type of challenge. I was facing one of my best friends, Ethan Moon. He's rated 1902 FIDE, and he was the lowest FIDE rated player in the section. But at the same time, he's 1902 FIDE, but his Canadian rating is over 2200. So players who are over 2200 Canadian rating are around like high 2000s strength usually. They're just pretty underrated FIDE. And the other challenge I had is that we played a lot of blitz and bullet games together, whether it's online and over the board at Hart House Chess Club on Fridays. So he's a type of player that knows me really well. So this sort of game in general, going against a player who's lower rated than me with the black pieces, but at the same time low rated but good enough to cause me challenges and put some pressure on me and punish me if I make mistakes. These sorts of games over the last few years have been a banana skin for me. Like when I'm doing really well, so I was in a good run, 5 games undefeated in Ottawa, and like now 1 win here, gaining a lot of rating. But these sorts of games are always a little bit tricky because I have to play for the win with the black pieces given the rating difference that we have. But at the same time, my opponent is good enough, so if I make a lot of overextending or weird moves, they're going to punish me. So these are some challenging games that over the last few years I have struggled with. So I was going into this game taking it very seriously. And I prepared a little bit for e4, d4, and c4. I knew he plays all 3 moves. So I prepped briefly and had a plan what to do against any of them. And he started the game with c4. So my idea was to go with the symmetrical English, which is the line that I'm the most comfortable with against the English. He played knight c3, I played knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7. Everything is symmetrical so far. And the idea of symmetrical English with black in general is that you play symmetrical up until some point, and then you wait for your opponent to show their cards. Here there are like a lot of ideas that white can go for. They can go with some a3, rook b1, b4 ideas. They can go with some bot-winning setup with e4, d3. Try to grab the center, but that weakens the d4 square. They can also go with like e3, d3 setups. They can go with e3, d4 setups. So there are a lot of ways to play this position, and I was expecting knight f3 more than anything else. But he played the move h4, which is a very rare move. Has been played only like 19 times in the top level. Kramnik played it. Like some top players like Parham Maksudlu have played this move h4. But I was pretty surprised with this move. I wasn't expecting it. But I vaguely remembered from the previous preparations that I had that I got to go knight f6, of course stopping h5. Now he plays knight h3. The idea is that he wants to put the knight on f4, first of all preparing this h5 move in case I castle, at the same time putting some pressure on the d5 square. So I played d6, and we played knight f4, so far very natural. And here I remembered vaguely that in my preparation I was making sort of a waiting move, which helps me at the same time. But I couldn't remember exactly which move was in my preparation. So I decided to go bishop d7, a developing move to defend my knight and also prepare rook b8, a6, b5 ideas. But this is slightly inaccurate, and I will tell you why. So the idea of a waiting move is that the best move here is actually rook to b8, like the move that I had in my preparation. And the idea is, if they go h5, now I have this nice move knight to g4. So I stop h6, I open up my bishop. Now you might ask, what if they go f3, attack the knight? Because now if I drop the knight back, they can go h6, and Now my bishop is going to get dislodged. But now I have this nice counter-attacking move g5, attacking the knight on f4. And if he drops back, again another counter-attacking move, knight g5, hitting the pawn on c4. And if he defends it, then I will go h6, and I will have a good position, with these pieces looking a little bit stupid on the edge of the board. And so the reason rook b8 is better than bishop d7, though, is that after rook b8, if they play a move like d3, now I play this nice move bishop g4. With bishop d7, of course, I will lose a tempo, going bishop d7 and then bishop g4. And the idea is that I will provoke f3. Like, he can keep the bishop here, but if he decides to kick it with f3, I will just go back. They go h5. I will castle. They go g4. Now I go knight e8. So, like, this is one way this game can go. It looks like white has some sort of attack, but the pieces are so uncoordinated. Like, what is this? It weakened all these dark squares around the king. The king has no real good place to hide. And even though it looks like white has a dangerous attack, even if they take and open the h file, I don't see how they can put a queen here in like the next 5 moves and like actually create some threats. Meanwhile, their dark squares are so weak and they're a little bit overextended with these pawns. So this is one way to play this position for black. Anyways, I played bishop d7. He played d3. Now I was a little bit worried of h5, so I played this move h6. The idea is very common. You want to meet this move h5 with g5, attacking the knight and just closing any sort of attacking ideas trying to open the h file. So now the game takes a very calm route. Both of us will try to go with this typical idea of going rook b8, a6, b5, and he's trying to go with rook b1, a3, b4. So he starts with rook b1, I go rook b8, and he plays a move which Engine calls it a slight inaccuracy, but I think it's a very human move to go bishop b2. And he told me after the game that he was worried of going a3 and then b4 right away because the x-rays on the c3 knight just look a little bit tricky. And I don't have any really dangerous x-rays right now, like any dangerous discovery attacks on the knight on c3. But the problem is if you play like this, you got to calculate everything, every single move if you don't defend your knight. Like, you got to see knight g4, knight h5. So I understand why he decided to go with bishop d2. If he had played like this, though, the best I had was just to go here, play b5, and we would have got a pretty much equal position, very symmetrical structure like this. Still some play left, of course, but clearly no side has a significant advantage in this position. Pretty much everything is symmetrical. So he played bishop d2, and that gives me a crucial tempo. I go a6, he goes a3, I go b5, we trade, and he goes b4. So in this position, I played the second best move, which I think, practically speaking, was a good decision. I played knight e5. So computer likes cb4, ab4, e6, and thinks black is just very slightly better. But I feel like in these sorts of positions with very symmetrical structure, it's going to be much harder to outplay your opponent. So I decided to keep things more imbalanced with knight e5 to make the game more interesting. And it worked, as my opponent quickly made a mistake here. He castled. Looks like a very normal move. But the best was to just take on c5, but that at least gives me some sort of imbalance. Now I have two pawns on the b and c file. He has pawns on d and a file. I have more space. b4 is coming. Maybe I can create a passed pawn. At the same time, I can maybe exploit the d4 square at some point. Maybe I can trade the bishop. So we are creating some sort of imbalance here. And the game can go something like queen c1, castle, knight cd5, takes, e6, king h7. Like, this is, of course, not the only way to play, but we can get a position like this, which is completely equal, but there is an imbalance. There is room to outplay your opponent in this sort of position. But my opponent castled a move which really surprised me, because I was already starting to think about the move g5. Because g5, if my opponent takes and I take back, the h file is going to be open, and all of a sudden he might be in some sort of trouble if the h file opens. So I instantly saw g5 the first moment he castled. It was in my mind to go g5. But then I was like, okay, g5 takes, knight moves away. then I would love to go bishop h3, trade this bishop, and then go for the attack. And even though I saw g5, I decided to make this move a little bit stronger by preparing it with queen c8. So this is the move I played in the game, and my idea was that now if I go g5, he takes, I take, knight goes to d5, now I go bishop h3, and all of a sudden I have a threat. I can take and now go queen h3. With queen on c8, it looks much stronger. At the same time, I was like, if he makes a move which really avoids g5, then I will always have queen a6 ideas to put pressure on a3 pawn. So to me, aside from preparing bishop h3, the move didn't seem stupid. Just to reroute this queen to a6, defend my pawns, and also put some pressure on a3. But this is not a good move, and I will tell you why. So the best was to go g5 right away. And the point is, he's never going to take. Like, he can take, but even without the queen on c8, taking is sort of disastrous for him, opening up the h-file. So this is not the main try against g5 that I need to be worried of. The main try against g5 is to play knight f to d5. And now the best I have is to take and play the move e6. And now with a queen on d8, the queen on d8 attacks the pawn on h4. So after he retreats the knight, I can take on h4, and I'm effectively up a pawn in this position. And my king in the middle is actually pretty safe. I don't see any clear way for my opponent to really attack my king. So I'm up a pawn. There's some compensation because it's still like this king is not super safe, but the compensation is definitely not enough for a pawn. So I played queen c8, and he played rook c1, which is not the best move, but the idea that he had in this position was actually pretty difficult to find. The best move was the move a4. Using the fact that I don't have any b4 pushes, so now the pawn on b5 is a little bit shaky. And if I take, now he starts trading everything. Takes, 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 and now knight takes a4. And all of a sudden, I'm in a situation where I'm in a structural disadvantage. I have this weak pawn on c5, and I don't think I have anything really to show for it. And I think white here is slightly better and can press against the weakness on c5 in the long run. He played rook c1 though, instead of a4. And here I went with g5. Which here, when I played g5, I was really confident that I'm going to win the game. I was thinking that I'm doing amazing. It's going to be a short game. I'm going to win the next 10 moves, and his king is going to get opened up, and he's going to make blunders. So I was really confident that I'm better here, and maybe even much better. So of course, I saw the best move bishop c6, but after takes, 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 it seemed like this is sort of equal. Like, it takes some sort of venom out of my g5 move compared to playing g5 right away. Like after f3, g5, black is still slightly better, but nothing crazy going against the king with the bishops traded off and the king on g2. So I saw this idea, but the reason I didn't go for it was that I thought g5 is crushing. Here I was very confident that black is much better, but I totally misevaluated the position. He played the best move, knight fd5. I was expecting that. And again, like, here you can see I go with a series of moves, which all of them are inaccuracies, but the reason I go for them is because I totally misevaluate the final position. So again, the best move is bishop c6, accepting that I'm slightly worse now and have to defend against the weaknesses on c5, for instance. But I was feeling like I'm better, like I have better things. I saw that if gh4, he has ideas like takes and knight e4. So I was like, first I trade the knights and then take on h4. And here I was like, okay, I'm up a pawn. And if he takes on h4 with the g pawn, this is terrible because now bishop h3 is going to come. Now you can see the point of queen c8. Now queen g4 is coming, rook g8 is coming. It looks as though white is getting crushed here. And it's true, like, it's already like minus 0.6 if white finds the best move. And if he doesn't find the best move, which is bishop f4, it's going to be dead loss. Not dead loss, maybe like close to loss. But anyways, the point is, he doesn't have to take. But on the other hand, I was like, if he doesn't take, I'm up a pawn. And I don't see enough compensation. So he played the best move, d4, exploiting the pin on the c file. I played knight c4. I was still very confident. takes, and h takes g3. So I was like, yeah, if he takes fg3, I go queen c5 with check, I'm up a pawn, and things should be good. But still here, I was slightly getting worried that after this, king h2, there's going to be bishop b4 coming, attacking my pawn on e7. And I was like, wait, maybe this is not so clear. Maybe I'm not that much better. This was my evaluation of the position. My opponent played a slight inaccuracy, bishop b4. The best was actually to go bishop f4, attacking the rook, and also preparing some knight c7 ideas. And I have to go e5 after taking on f2. But that creates so many weaknesses, like on d6 squared, the pawn on f7. And here, if he just drops back bishop d2, I'm just worse. Like, I'm up a pawn, I can even take the second pawn, but that's disastrous after bishop b4. So this was the best way for my opponent to play. But this is still sort of an unclear position. It's difficult to evaluate this. He played bishop b4, which is an interesting move. And here I made a horrible blunder. I played g takes f2 check. So the problem again stems from the fact that I thought I'm better and I should play for the win. I was like, if I go like bishop c6, which is the best move, he's just going to take, and I'm not going to be up a pawn, and I'm slightly worse because he has more activity. So it was difficult for me to still accept the fact that I'm already slightly worse and I need to try and consolidate. After a move like bishop e5, computer says it's slightly better for white, but I think in a practical game, this is exactly unclear. Like, you can never tell who's better here. Like, both kings are pretty much weak, and it's a completely three-result game, and I should have played like this. But here, I took on f2 with a pawn. And after he took, initially I was like, okay, I'm up a pawn. How to consolidate? I'm going to make, if I can make like 2 or 3 accurate moves and consolidate, then I'm going to be in the driving seat and I'm going to probably win the game. So to me, I was feeling like, okay, I have these pawns in front of my king, and he doesn't have any pawns in front of the king. So if I can have time to do something like this, and then bishop b4 at some point, like maybe queen g4, bishop b4, like if I have all the time in the world, this king can be weak. But then I got here and I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? Like, why am I feeling the heat? Why am I feeling like I'm worse? This was my initial thought here. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's c6 coming, opening up the knight and the bishop on the e7 pawn. There's always like knight e7 ideas to open up the bishop next. And here I realized, oh my god, I'm in deep trouble. If I go like e6, for instance, then he can still go knight e7 anyways. Like, it seems weird, but the point is, knight on e7 is untouchable. If I take c6 comes with check, if I just move my queen, then c6 comes anyway, and my bishop is kind of trapped on d7. So I was slowly starting to be like, wait, maybe I'm worse. And then I found this move, bishop c6, which is kind of the best move. But then I was like, he has knight takes e7, sacking the knight. And now if I take that with a king, he's going to take rook takes c4. Of course, I can't take the rook because queen d6 check, king e8, bishop c6 resigns. But then I found this move, rook d8, and I was like, okay, I'm fighting back. I'm attacking the queen, very nice intermediate move, and now I'm going to take the rook next move. But then I saw this insane queen sacrifice, queen to d6. And I was like, I have to take the queen. He's going to take with a c-pawn. And now if I go king d7, trying to hold on to the bishop, I'm just going to lose the game like this. And like, even though, like, I'm not even up material in this position, and it's clear that my king is so weak, and all these rooks are going to be coordinated on the 7. So I have to go king d8, hanging the bishop on c6, but then he can give this check, play d7. Like, of course, I didn't see all of these lines, but it just looked so scary going into this with a pawn promoting. Actually, it's funny that after queen a6, the only winning move is bishop takes b5. And now if I take this bishop on b5, there's going to be rook c8. And if I take the bishop on a5, there's still going to be rook c8. But now I have queen d8. And you get this endgame where I'm dead lost because the pawn on d7 is just too strong, tying this rook down to the defense forever. And there's other passed pawns to deal with. It's an opposite colored bishops, but with the rooks on the board, I think white is definitely going to win this with correct play. So I saw rook d8 is dangerous in this position, and my idea was to go bishop e5, stopping queen d6, and this to me seemed a little bit unclear. So I was like, I don't see exactly how white is going to win this. Material is equal. My king is really weak, but I don't see how to win. In fact, I saw queen d6. Again, it's the best move, the only winning move. But after takes, king e6, rook c6, queen g8, I was thinking this position is unclear. Like, I'm up 3 points of material, queen versus 2 bishops. My king is definitely much weaker, but I didn't see exactly how white is going to win. But white is winning with very slow play. Like, there's no killer blow, but if he goes rook f3 and just brings these rooks, his king is going to get kicked away, and then the d pawn is going to be super strong. 2 bishops are going to dominate the board, and the queen has no weaknesses to play against. Everything is protected in white's position, and here it's like +4. I'm up 3 points of material, but it's +4 because the bishops are just too strong. So anyways, this was my idea against knight takes c7. But I totally missed that he can change the move order. He took on c4 with the rook. And here I was like, wait a minute, I'm dead. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna lose this game. Because now if I take the knight first, this was one of my ideas, to take the knight first and then go e6, attacking the bishop and the rook, but he has this nice move, rook e4, saving the piece, and I'm just down a piece and I'm gonna lose the game. So I was like, the only chance is to take the rook, and after knight e7, I played queen g4, which is again, slight inaccuracy. The best move objectively was queen d8, but I was like, if I do this endgame is probably going to be an easy win for my opponent. With 2 bishops dominating the board and the c-pawn coming down, I was really not confident that I have good chances to hold this. So I tried to muddy the waters and play queen g4. He took on c6, attacking my rook. Like, the position is so sad that computer likes castles more than anything else, just playing down a piece. But of course, I'm not going to do that. I was fighting back more practically with rook c8, played queen d5, threatening mate on f7. So now I have to try and trade the queens. Again, engine likes castles, but after knight e7, I lose a piece, and I'm going to lose the game very easily. So I offered a queen trade, and he played a very nice move, e3. To me, it was weird at the start, but I can't take this because of mate. And it opens the rook to come to c2 and collect my c-pawn. So here I was like, okay, I'm surely going to lose this. There's no more hope. Yeah, it's 22 minutes as well, and there's no way he can go wrong here. But I was like, okay, let's play some more moves. I played rook f8. He took the queen. Like, obviously, if he keeps the queens on the board, my king is much weaker, but he was pretty confident that he's going to win this endgame after rook c2, and correctly so. And I played c3, and here he made a huge mistake, in my opinion. He blitzed bishop takes c3, which makes the win much harder. It's still definitely winning, but it makes it much harder. I saw that after knight d4, it's almost resign time for me, because I have to take the knight, and after he takes, he now has 2 bishops completely escorting this pawn down the board pretty easily, and my pawn on c3 is also going to fall. And I really don't have any sort of tricks left in the position to play. This is just curtains, basically. But he took on c3, and now I was like, wait, I take, and now I play this nice move, rook f5. And all of a sudden, things are not easy anymore. The problem is, now the knight on c6 is stuck. If he moves the knight, he's going to lose his strong c5 pawn. And if he doesn't, this knight is going to get attacked by the king very soon. It's going to be difficult to convert this position now, and it requires some accuracy. So here, he was already starting to get tilted. I could read his body language that he was mentally a little bit tilted and checked out of the game. He was feeling like the win is gone. While in reality, it's still completely winning. He played a4, but after a very long thing, he's now down to 4 minutes. And I played this move king d7. I saw that there's rook g5 as well, but the reason I didn't play it was his body language. I saw king d7 is not drawing, but I felt like he didn't see the idea against king d7, and that's why he was spending so long on a move like a4. So a move like rook g5 leads to something like this. Knight d4, takes, 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 takes. And now the thing is, white has two pawns and a knight and a bishop against rook and a pawn. And this should be winning technically because the pawns are pretty much guardable. And this position is probably going to be a win for white, technically in the long run. It's still not super easy to win, but I thought if he gets to this position, he's going to play it on forever. And I'm going to make mistakes here. And I think, even objectively speaking, this is lost. So I kind of tried to put more pressure on him on the clock. I blitzed king d7. Not blitz, I spent like 2 minutes. But here he missed the win. He played knight d4, which is the second best move, but he misses an easy win. He had rook d3 check, king goes back, and now, even though the pawn on c5 is hanging, he has a nice move rook to d6. Now if I take the pawn, he's going to take on e6, and then take on h6, and he has two extra pawns, and a bishop and knight versus the rook. So this has to be winning in the long run, but it still takes some effort and accuracy to convert. The key idea, though, is that I can't go king f7. If I go king f7, now he has rook d7 check, king f6, and now he exploits these rooks on c8 and f5 and plays knight to e7 and wins the game. So I saw that when playing king d7. I saw that, but I was pretty sure that my opponent didn't because of his body language in the game. He wasn't feeling confident anymore. So he played knight d4, which loses a lot of advantage, but it's still tricky in this position. Like, it's still with an a pawn, with material advantage, two pieces versus the rook. I need to be really careful. He played rook e3, a slight inaccuracy. The more accurate move was a5. The point is, I can't take in the view of knight c6 check. And if e5, he can give a check. And there are some crazy lines that computer gives. Like, they're not easy to find for a human, especially with like 3 minutes on the clock. Like, he could give this pawn and then goes for some active play like this. And this position is apparently winning, but it's not really clear how. Engine is confident that this is winning, but like, it requires so much effort for white to win this. It's not easy at all. He played rook a3, normal move, putting the rook behind the passed pawn. But now I go for the rook trade. I go here and rook c3. And my idea is that if he goes rook here, now I have e5, kicking the knight and then trading the rooks on the second rank. So he decides to trade and goes a5. And the position is still winning. Position is still winning, but I was trying to press him on the clock. Again, the best move is e5. But my idea is that e5 is actually leading to a pretty much vaguely clear position. So he goes knight c6 and knight b4, preparing a6. And we get a position like this. Like, I was seeing positions like that where I get rook and h pawn versus knight, bishop, and e pawn. But these positions are actually table-based wins. But in reality, first of all, it requires a lot of technique to push this pawn forward very slowly. And even if you succeed in that and you win the rook eventually after like 50 other moves of grinding, you got to demonstrate how to checkmate with bishop and knight. So this game would have taken at least 100 moves, like at least like 60 more moves. This is move 43. This would have taken at least 60 more moves to actually convert and win. But I played rook a3, and now this is dead loss, but he needs to find the only winning move. You guys can pause the video and try to find the only winning move for white in this position. Alright, looks as though the pawn is dropping, and the only move to play is knight c6 check. But then I go king d6, and the knight is stuck, and it's not easy to push this pawn further, because the bishop is also stuck defending the knight on c6. But he had the right idea, but the wrong execution. He played a nice move bishop f1, which is a blunder, preparing this move a6, and of course I can't take the pawn because of knight c6 check. If he had gone bishop e7, though, this would have been completely winning, because now the bishop on b7 really supports the pawn in the next 3 moves. It even supports the pawn until this square on a8, and it also supports the knight on c6. So the game goes like e5, knight c6 check, king d6, a6. Now the threat is to just push the pawn. So I have to go king c7, stopping a7 in the view of king takes b7. But now knight takes e5, h5, knight f3, and he puts the pawn on e4. The bishop on b7 guards both pawns. He will slowly but surely collects the h-pawn, and it still takes some technique to win this, but I think it's going to be pretty easy once you win the h-pawn. So yeah, this was a win with bishop e7, but he played bishop f1, but now after e5, he can't go knight c6 because now king d6. Can't go a6 anymore because the bishop is not on b7, guarding the knight on c6. So he went for the h-pawn, but now I take the a-pawn, and in this position, I offered him a draw, and he accepted the draw offer, which made me really happy, actually. Like, he could at least try to press me a little bit, maybe put this pawn on e4, try to bring this bishop to d5, maybe win this pawn on e5 with some knight g4 ideas. But I still would have moved the king to d6, maybe put the rook on a better square to defend the pawn. It's a table-based draw, but I think he could have maybe tried to massage the position a little bit more, maybe move around a little bit, because there's literally no chance to lose this position. There's literally no chance for me to win. So he could have maybe played on for like 20, 30 more moves, but he was already mentally exhausted and a little bit tilted that he squandered such huge advantage that he took the draw. He actually told me after the game that he was not confident of his own technique to convert bishop and knight checkmate, and he didn't want to get embarrassed in the sense that he wins this pawn somehow, I sack the rook for the pawn, and then he fails to convert the bishop and knight checkmate. So this was another reason he didn't decide to continue. But I think even if he had continued with correct play and with 18 minutes of time that I had, I could have pulled this position. But still, after he accepted the draw, so the game ended in a draw. Let me insert the results real quick. So the game ended in a draw. In this series, I'm actually not showing the results right away just to make it more interesting. So the game ended in a draw. Like, of course, I lose 7 rating points for making this draw with a player rated 300 points lower than me. But even though I'm losing a lot of rating, this draw felt like a win for me. Given the position that I had and given how lost my position was, I was so happy after I saved this draw. It was a huge result. Could have completely ruined my tournament if I had lost this game, but a draw with black, still okay. Like, going to the third round, now this draw was canceling out my first round wins. So rating-wise, I was pretty much even, and I had 1.5 out of 2, so definitely not the end of the world. And I could accept this result and move forward, and I was pretty happy that I put up some resilience, created some problems, and even though my opponent helped me with so many mistakes, and also like mentally checking out of the game after making the first one, I was able to. I was actually pretty happy how I put up so much resilience and I could save half a point. Anyways, this wasn't a great game. I made a huge misevaluation of the position in this position when I went with g5, thinking that after this sequence, I'm going to be up a pawn. But once I got to this position with making this big blunder g takes f2, I realized how bad my position was, how strong these knight e7, c6 ideas were. And I was in a dead loss position at this point. But my opponent played a really good game from the moment I played g5. From the moment I played g5 in this position, my opponent played an amazing game until he got to this position on c3. And he could have won the game, like with a one more accurate move, knight d4, it would have been without any issues. But starting with bishop c3 and giving me this sort of like rook f5 idea, pinning the knight, it started to get a little bit more challenging, and he was low on time from here as well, and he couldn't find the best moves to win the game. And it was a huge let up for me. It was points lost, rating points lost, but a huge save. I lose 7 rating points, but I saved 10 more by making this draw. So I was pretty happy at the end of the day making this draw, and pretty much energized going into the third round. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. If you like this video, make sure to smash the like button. Make sure to let me know your comments and thoughts about this game in the comments down below. And subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to stay tuned for the future content and recaps coming out very, very soon. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Have a great one and see you soon. Goodbye.